trying to share as well. You have my contact details here. Please feel free to reach out to me for anything we can collaborate. I have with me my colleague Vineet Goyal. He's an architect. He's a technical genius on FNO side. Also a Microsoft certified trainer, and he's also very active on the community also. So together we'll like to take through these AP invoice automation. I think it had always been a hot topic, but more so now in the present time. So as part of the agenda, we'll take through the reason why companies essentially go for invoice automation. Certain times you have to sell it, certain times the business itself feel the need, and certain times it's the value addition that it brings to the table. So we'll discuss a few whys around the invoice automation. We'll like to take through the details on what are the options from a technological standpoint, what is Microsoft offering, what is something new that's available. We like to take through the data flow, how and where, which these technology options when we are using, and the different systems that are being used, how information is shared. And we'll take through a sample flow also. We'll first do an end-to-end visual on the PowerPoint, and then we'll also use the same as an example to drive home using the demo also. We'll also cover what are the solution insights, what to be watchful of, what are some limitations or prerequisites that are needed. And then we'll do the demo and we'll be happy to take Q&A. So some W's, right? So typically there are so many W's, why, what, which, when, who. We'll like to focus on the why, what, and the which, right? So why invoice automation? So in essential, all companies want to have streamlined and better processes. Whether it's a booming economy or a disruptive time, whether it all brings this disruption brings a lot of need either to automate or to save cost and make, let's say, productivity better. So invoice automation is one of the areas which largely gets attention as one of the automation projects when typically during go live, what we have seen, it can happen mostly after go live in subsequent phases. This process is a lot of human intensive, right? It requires a lot of human effort because it means interaction, communication with the vendors. It does mean looking into the document they send every time, and this is like almost like a regular activity. Going through those information and then essentially processing it. At some companies, it can take time for the invoices to show up in FNO. Even then, those invoices might have been received maybe few hours or few days or few weeks ago. Now that impacts your cash flow also. That impacts the visibility of how much liability is out there to be paid. And this is going to be so much critical in decision making. So it's a great opportunity to essentially collaborate with vendors, collaborate with your purchasing team, the buying team, as well as the accounts payable team, and bring in an automation that will help in making some of these activities automated, and then get human intelligence just for the last mile decision making that's needed. What it will do is it will, certainly have significant cost savings. It will have better experience from a vendor perspective also, right? They will like their vendor invoices to be acknowledged, to be paid on time, and certainly the timeline of the vendor invoice, whether it's physical or electronically received, till it goes to the finance and operation as a actual invoice, that impact of risk essentially also gets reduced. So that kind of gives an idea about some of the whys that we have seen in the industry with the customers, why this is gaining more traction, and we'd like to take through the what part also. So what are the options, right? When you talk of invoice automation, there are multiple choices available. A lot of the companies, if they have a trading partner, they typically go with the EDI, the electronic data interchange, and there are different EDI formats and numbering and process that can be followed. FNO also provides vendor portal. This collaboration is great. They can do a lot of things over there, not just invoice automation. They can participate in bidding. They can participate in the purchase ordering process, and certainly on the invoicing process also. The third one is the use of artificial intelligence, use of, talking of automation, we will talk of PowerAutomate also. So the artificial intelligence and the latest OCR capabilities that PowerAutomate bring. So this is the whole Dynamics 365 universe combined with finance and operation that becomes a very powerful story, last mile solution that customers can benefit very, very soon. We'll talk of now the which part. So in which we will talk of the tools actually. So you definitely have at the center finance and operation. You definitely need to have PowerAutomate. Now there will be different use case scenarios of using PowerAutomate. It could be, let's say, an email that vendor sends, or it could be some paper documents that the vendor sends, or it could be, you might have a collaboration directly with the vendor or in terms of getting their invoices on a common platform, let's say Azure. So there are different ways how the information can be ingested. We'll take a scenario where typically, which is most frequent, which is vendor sending invoice in email. And from that point on, what's the story of that invoice coming in email to showing up in the invoicing page or the pending vendor invoicing page and for approval within FNO. So that covers our all the different whys. What we'll now do is talk of the technology options. Primarily, we'll focus here on the AI and the OCR part, leveraging PowerAutomate. And within that, when AI came into picture and OCR came into picture, form processing was the only option at that point. And we could have created, let's say, different groups. So for every vendor, their invoice template can be different. So we can create a collection, and that collection can be for a specific vendor. You can have one collection, and likewise, for other vendors, you can have other collections. There were few challenges in terms of managing it quite early, like few months ago, but now it has been much improved to manage these collections. Now collections and this is called as form processing within PowerAutomate. Now, we can have our own templates. We can use few documents. Vineet will cover as to how many documents typically are needed and how Microsoft is making it better. But this is the only way how we can modify a particular AI process to read through the emails and read through the invoice itself. Could be coming in different file formats and be able to process it. There is a recent addition to the PowerAutomate and invoicing automation solution, which is a pre-built invoice processing solution now available. What it does is it's a last mile tailor-made option available by Microsoft, which can be used to quickly gather all the invoicing related information, which is like very frequent, like the purchase order number, invoice, and amounts and dates and those. Now, but this is kind of black box as of now. You can't modify much. So for modifications, you can easily use the form processing. So it's a combination. Since this is a last mile solution, which is pre-built, we can suggest that you can go with it. There are some additional requirements from the business, from a solution need that those fields that it is covering out of box are not sufficient enough. You can essentially switch to the form processing. So now how does the data flow happen? So we want to cover some of the data flow within the two primary systems here. We are going to skip the Azure part and how the packaging or some attachments and everything can be seen for the later slides. This one will focus more on the data flow, primarily PowerAutomate and FNO. So the business case scenario here is you get an email from vendors. Again, it's a monitored mailbox. That's where the AP team and purchasing team can work to agree with the vendors. And then as soon as the email comes, you can have PowerAutomate run some triggers that can trigger as soon as the email comes. It can trigger reading of that attachment. It can look for the type of the file that's there, and it can also look which template it matches or the collection it is matching. So this, what it will do is then it will, once it is it uses OCR, right, to recognize the different fields on those documents, where it belongs, and to some extent it can recognize the lines of the invoices also, which has the details, right? It could be inventory, it could be services, it could be in general categories that may be provided, and then it can package it, and through using the help of some data functions and the Azure data functions and storage which is out there, the whole information, including the invoicing header and lines, as well as the entire invoice itself, make it available within Dynamics. So what it does is, for an accounts payable invoice processor, it can then become such an easy task to just simply go to a screen which is called pending vendor invoice, and it will automatically show up over there. Now we can, from a solution standpoint, a lot of times some information may be incomplete in different invoices from a vendor. In those cases, we can create an exception processing route also, and that also can be monitored and visualized by the AP processing person. Now, we utilize 3 out-of-box entities which Microsoft provided. One is the invoice header, invoice line, and the document attachment. So this header and line essentially are reading most of the information using the OCR and PowerAutomate from the invoice vendor sent. The document attachment is nothing but passing that information and making it available right within finance and operation. So it's very easy then for accounts payable invoice processor to see it like side by side. Now, we also want to call out Microsoft is making this feature more and more enhanced with every releases. And if you might be aware, then the Wave 2 release that's available right now, a lot of those features are now public available. Earlier, you might have to see that in previews or other ways. So there is a specific feature you can add it through feature management called the vendor invoice automation. And it can do certain tasks more enhanced for you. So things like, as soon as a pending vendor invoice is created through this invoice automation, it can automatically submit it to the workflow, which is the accounts payable invoice workflow. So that is one. It can do that in bulk. 2, it can also provide an option for us to see that in Power BI also. Some of the options of how this invoice automation is looking like how many are still pending, how many are in workflow, how many got approved. So all of that is now available. So with that, I will have my colleague Vineet take over and share and take us through the details on more from here. Vineet, over to you.
Hello. Hi guys, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Rahul. So, okay. So, as discussed, the PowerAutomate flow starts with the vendor invoice email. Now, this comes directly from vendor, or this could be internal processing where finance controller is doing some review if required, and then sending it to a shared mailbox. Or it can be a scan copy where you are getting physical document, you scan it and send it to shared mailbox. That's where the flow is going to start. As soon as the email is received, this PowerAutomate will trigger. It will read the email, check for the viruses in the attachment, and then it will start the processing. So that's a nice feature PowerAutomate has inbuilt, which helps us from the security perspective as well. So once this is triggered, what it does is it needs a data, invoice number, invoice ID, the invoice date, PO, whatever data we need, that is all is read by OCR using AI Builder model. So now I mentioned it modular models. Now before collection, there were no chance where we have multiple vendor layouts, the invoice layouts. So that's why we used to have multiple models, one model for each vendor. Now using the collection, we can use one model and reuse that, which will help us save the cost. We'll come to that. So for this training, there is a concept called invoice document training. For each AI Builder model, we have to provide some document, sample document. So it understand, okay, where is the data coming from, which field needs to be taken as invoice number or invoice date and stuff. That is where this invoice document, this is more like a prerequisite. All the models needs to be trained before they are usable in Power Automate. What happens once you have this data? We, as a part of Power Automate, we check, okay, there are all the validations and if all the data is correct. Once it is there, we push this data and use two data entity as mentioned by Rahul, line and header entity using OData, and then we create a pending vendor invoices. For all the error scenarios, what we are doing is we are having email notifications. So this is another shared mailbox which is handling all the error scenarios. So invoice is not readable, a date format is not readable, or the vendor what you are getting it. So another thing. So to decide the logic we are using, we set the subject, email subject we are using as a vendor account. That's how Flow needs to know, okay, which vendor is the invoice for and what's the AI builder model to use. Now, suppose for some reason it doesn't exist. So we also have those validation which will send email to shared email error email. So that way it is consolidated into one place. Once this is done, pending vendor invoice is created. We have a data package creation. So this is required for the document attachment. Whatever data PDF we have received, we are also attaching it to pending vendor invoice. For that, we are using Azure function. What it does, there are CSV files. It will update all the data from AI builder model. It will create a zip package, which then can be uploaded using a REST API to Dynamics 365 Finance and Operation. So here, right now, we are using REST API. This can also be done using recurring integration, but with recurring integration, it becomes bad job, which processes it. With REST API, the control remains with Flow, and then for that we need data package, and hence this step is required. There is another thing what we did. Instead of being dependent only on email, we also created a special error vendor like OCR underscore error. That's the vendor name. So what we do, any error scenarios, we still create a pending vendor invoice, but instead of actual vendor, we use this exception vendor and then attach it to this document. So what happens for a finance controller, he doesn't need to really monitor the email, but everything is in Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations. They don't have to go out of it. They check it. Okay, there is a pending vendor invoice for this particular vendor, the error vendor. So they can go ahead and check, okay, the invoice is not correct or the PO is not correct or whatever. So they know what needs to be done. They can review it, update the data there itself, and then your pending vendor invoice is ready for use. So as I said, for the training, initially it used to be 20 training documents per invoice format. That was suggested by Microsoft. Nowadays we see in 10 to 15 document, it kind of gives best result. I mean, the minimum is required 5, but with 5 we have seen that the data read is not properly. Sometimes it misses a date. A lot of time we have seen a date is missed. But with more and more training, it perfects, and that's how it works. Typically, the files we use are PDF, which are coming directly from vendor, and the images which are scanned from physical document. And so this is what we are talking about is only for the header part and the attachment part. So there is a problem or limitation right now is when it's a complex invoice format, it doesn't read the lines correctly. Let's say table inside table, or when there is one row and there is blank row and then another row. In those scenarios, AI doesn't read proper lines. And then that's why we actually initially went with all the lines processing, and then we kind of stopped it because the success rate was much lower. MS is already working on enhancing this. So hopefully this would be much better. By the way, it works if the invoice format is simple, where line grids are there and row grids are there, and it's like a very table format. In that case, it is very easy to read the invoice lines and then use the OData call to create the invoice lines. So prerequisite, why we added it as the last is more like this is where it costs money. So we decided we keep it at the last. So from the Power Automate side, we need flow to plan. I think this is changed to some premium Power Automate in recent time. We need AI Builder add-on, which cost about 500 USD per month. And as per the suggestion, 1,000 invoices can be processed by 1 unit. For the attachment, we are using Azure function, which is charged per execution, which is very negligible. It's kind of, I would say, free of cost. There's one thing which is missing here is the email. We need 2 emails. One is where the actual invoices are coming, and the second is where error scenarios are mentioned. Okay, so I think we'll move to demo now. One of my colleagues will share the demo. Hello?
Okay, yeah. So let me know when you guys can see my screen.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so as mentioned, these are the AI models. So I can first, we will go through the AI models first. So for this particular AI model, we have trained it with multiple documents, and then we are pulling these many fields from the model. Now, in this model, we have used the new feature that is mentioned, collections. So collections is nothing but a group of documents which share same layout, and you can create collection vendor wise. So now for same AI model, this is one Adatum Corporation, and you can see we pulled invoice date, invoice number, and all those things. Even we pulled the table as well. If you see the model name, it is still FP demo, Real Dynamics FP demo. And in the same one, Real Dynamics FP demo, we have another invoice as well, which is having different format, but similar fields. So it pulled that as well. So now with this collection feature, you don't have to create multiple models, but you need to create multiple collection inside one model. So this is one good thing, and you can see it pulls most of the things. Even if it is a tabular format, it pulls the table as well. So this is with respect to form processing. We are using form processing as a base here. Now the one new thing that Microsoft introduced is invoice processing, which is pre-built model altogether. And it is like optimized to recognize common invoice elements like invoice ID, invoice date, amount, and all those things. So for that, just to try it out, I have given one invoices that we have already, sample invoice, and it pulled most of the fields. So it pulled address, then it pulled invoice date, invoice ID. You can see the fields on the right hand side as well. And this you can directly use inside the flow as well. You don't have to kind of train it. You can directly use in the flow, and it will just pull the existing fields that are given by Microsoft. Now on this one, if you want to have some custom fields that organizations are having, or you want to pull the tables, those are not supported. For that, you need to go through form processing only. So you can go back to the first model, and that is form processing. Now this is with respect to AI model. Now once the AI model is ready, we use that in the flow that we have created. So this is our flow structure. As mentioned, share mailbox is our trigger point. So once email arrives in share mailbox, the flow will trigger. And then we are using the subject of the email as our vendor identification mechanism. So whatever subject that will be there in the email, that we will match with our AI model. So if that subject doesn't match with AI model, then it will say that AI model did not find. With this mechanism, we can use same solution for multiple vendors and for multiple AI models, which is in case in future, we can use it for multiple collection as well. And after that, as mentioned, these are all the variables, and then we are going through some exception handling. So first one is if AI model does not found, then it will send an email that, okay, so and so is missing, PO number not recognized, PO number does not matching, and then last one is if invoice number does not recognized. But if all these things are passed and everything is good, then what we are doing, we are creating a header. We are creating an invoice header with all the fields that we have extracted, and we are this will create a header, and after that it will create attachment. So with Azure function, we are creating attachment as well. So this is how our flow is working. It is kind of a complex flow, but many things, many exception handlings that are taken care in that. And for all the exception, it will also create a pending vendor invoice with vendor as OCR underscore exception, so that it will still go to Dynamics, and then AP person can go and check what are the things that are missing, or is it correct invoice or not. So that will be, after that, they can just process that manually. Now, for our demo right now, we are using this particular AI model. The name is Real Dynamics, and we are pulling these fields: invoice number, invoice date, and purchase order number. So just go through that. We have created a short demo. I'll start that short demo, and I'll also mention things in between as well. So, so to start with this is the invoice that we want to process. The vendor will send this type of invoice. It will have invoice number, invoice date, and PO number, which fields we are trying to pull. The vendor will send email, some similar to this, and it will have attachment and few more scenarios. This is our attachment that vendor will send. Once this is sent, it will come to our shared mailbox. This is our shared mailbox, and email will be arrived at shared mailbox. The subject is important, as I mentioned. It has to be Real Dynamics, so it has to be mapped with AI model. Now, once this has happened, this is our trigger to the flow. So now the flow is triggered. If you can see in here, the flow is triggered, and it takes around 1.5 minutes every time. And once that is done, flow is triggered, you will see the result in the pending vendor invoice of Dynamics. So now once we refresh it here, you will see that for that particular invoice, Acme Office Supply, this particular vendor, this particular invoice is created for that particular vendor. The vendor number is extracted by AI model, which is 1101, and also date and PO number, all these things are provided. Now, as mentioned, right now we are not processing lines, but in future with some better functionality, we will be able to process lines as well. So if you see here on the left hand side, you will see all the fields, and right hand side the attachment as well. So here onwards, API can just map it and take it from here. So yeah, this is all with the demo, and we can go through Q&A.
Thank you, Vineet. And I think, see, this is where it's very important that once we see what is in Dynamics, it's important for AP person to quickly validate this. Again, as I mentioned, with the new Wave 2 feature, you can automatically send these to workflow, and the workflow will then do the required way also. But the approver person will see this screen, will be able to cross-check, validate, and then be able to process it. Okay, so I think this is what we had in mind from a presentation and demo perspective. We have time. We'll be happy to take queries. I know some had raised hand or would like to ask. So we are here to help and suggest any of the doubts you may have.
Okay,
We can take off the sharing.
There are a number of questions in the chat, and there are a lot. Okay, let me try to read some of them. So
that means it's a lot of interest to all the participants on this topic.
I think so, yeah, of course. So let me read. What about lines? How system recognize lines? For example, in one invoice there can be 1,000 lines, but accountant want to post only 5 lines. Yeah,
okay. That's the okay. I think great question. So if your vendor invoice has many lines and the accountant wants to process only few lines, see at present the way the AI builder, whether you use the invoice processing or the form processing, it's going to read, the way we train it is read the entire table, right? It's the table, think of it as the atomic, you read everything or you choose not to read it. Once it is read and it is created, instead of creation those lines in Dynamics and the pending vendor invoice, it's much easier for the AP person, just keep those lines and delete all of the lines, right? So it will be just a very quick activity for them to do, but it will still help them move forward. Now, the question that really from a business standpoint that should be addressed is why the only few lines needs to be processed, right? It could be a approval mechanism or what essentially goes in that thought process. The system cannot be made, though it's artificial intelligence, that's really a human intelligence to know why to only go with few lines and not the entire set of invoice line. Vineet, anything you in addition?
No, I think you're right. So see, this kind of decision is more like a controller who is actually doing the invoicing. So that's the part of review. So pending vendor invoices is for that same reason. So it will probably create all the lines, and then whoever is want to post it is going to review it, make sure the data is correct, and they want to post it for any business process, and then they will delete it, whichever lines or even update lines which they don't want. See this process, what it helps is, see right now we have seen many AP guys which are always busy and they don't attach invoices in the 365 itself, and then you kind of lost that track. Initially what we had thought that we'll get everything there, but because of the complications we couldn't get the line processing done properly. So what we then ended up doing is create the header part, attach it, and make it ready. So we are not even putting purchase order number. So as soon as user puts the purchase order number, all the lines gets populated automatically out of box, and they can simply delete it. I saw the question about the partial invoices. So what they do is they get all the data for PO, they remove it or update the quantity, and then as a part of review process, post it. They'll do the three-way matching and stuff, which is standard process.
Okay.
We hope it answers.
Yeah, maybe you can post your contact details in the chat in case people will come up with questions later on and want to contact you. Yeah.
Sure. So I'll put both of ours.
Yeah, and I will just try to go through the questions here. There is a question if there are a few customized fields in the lines, how to handle that? I mean, it's maybe just some customizations in general.
Right. So as we mentioned, right, then don't take the invoice processing from PowerAutomate, take the form processing. That will be one of the decision point. The second decision point will be you might have added those fields on the invoice lines. It will be needed to be on the data entity for the invoice lines also. As long as that is matched, you can the PowerAutomate within PowerAutomate, as Vineet had shown, where you have the logic builder, all of those fields, then you can choose which one corresponds to which one.
So I see the question from Lynn. Will this create duplicate header if the same invoice emailed more than once? So no, it will not. We have the again error handling scenario in PowerAutomate, which will check if the exists. If the invoice exists, then update the attachment. That's what we are doing right now. See, this entire flow is quite complex, and it can be tailor-made per requirement for each organization. They may have different requirements, and then we have to update it. What we did is we checked if it already exists, then update it instead of doing anything. And I think we also had an error where it says, okay, not error, but really a warning that header already exists, like an invoice already exists. We are attaching the invoice. That's what we did. Will we need to create multiple Power Automate and AI model per vendor, as different vendors will have different formats. So Rachit, yes, we used to do that. In recent changes, there is a concept called collection where we don't need multiple AI model, but the same AI model can be used for multiple templates, as long as the data we need is same for all the templates. Do we need to? Yeah, go ahead, Rahul.
I was saying on that one, this is great dollar savings for the customer because every model will have costed, even though the number of invoice processing will have been far lower than the threshold. So it's great to have just one model and then have different collections. That keeps the dollar savings also intact and improves on the manageability and the lifecycle part also.
So Praveen is asking, do we need to educate vendors to send the email in certain format? So actually, we tried doing that. See, if we want to have the best format possible, usually vendors are not going to change the format for us. If possible, yeah, let's get it done. If it is not, then we'll have to work, survive with the format they send. And then whatever data you can fetch from it and then use for the vendor pending vendor invoice creation. If vendor is willable or wants to change their format, it is well and good. Then you can simply give a best format which will read everything which we want in a table format, nice structured way, where everything is working.
The only thing that is mandatory is vendor need to send subject as AI model. So that thing we need to educate them. That is the mandatory one for Flow to understand the AI model.
Yeah, and great question. So one of the additional point I'll add is, there are organizations which have a few thousand vendors. Imagine the number of invoices that will come in, and hence standardizing it to some extent the purchasing team and AP team can do. But this is where all the complexities is. This is where the process becomes so longer. The visibility tends to come quite late in the process for senior management and for knowing the cash positions or the cash management also. This is where this automation becomes very helpful for at least getting most of the part automatically done, and then the visibility that the data is surfaced up in Dynamics as soon as the invoice comes up. That is the best part of going with the automation approach.
There are a lot of questions. I think I may have missed some of them. Does the Power Automate check if the invoice is posted? Yes, so we do that. We check it as a part of error handling, as I mentioned. Is it possible to set if invoice line contains description, like star office, star D365 should enter business unit dimension administrative? So something that we'll probably have to create that logic. See, AI Builder is going to give you data, raw data from PDF or image. Whatever logic needs to be done, it can be done in Flow, or let's say if you can do it in the data entity itself, you can create custom data entity to have the custom logic, whatever you want, and then use post load method and add it's infinite possibilities. Whatever you want, we can do it.
That means tailoring it also. So if there are additional things that needs to be like defaulted, then either you might use eventing, you might use some other techniques to capture existing information on purchase orders or receipts and then match it up on the invoice if the information on the invoice doesn't come at the first place. Hope it answers your question.
Yeah, there are more. So do you have recommendation where similar concept can be applied in other processes like ASN or other processes where documents are exchanged? Definitely. This becomes like a template, and this can be reused for any other process we want, any document handling where there is minimum overhead required from the man-hour perspective.
Yeah, well, one of the immediate thing you will see is expense management, among others. Expense management, there also you'll have so many templates, so many moving parts, and the need to automate, because that's the process which takes more time, is the process which is not going to give visibility early enough, and hence it's it's a great opportunity or a disruptor for automating it.
Do you know any alternative to Azure AI OCR? I do know one of them, not really many of them. We are more like a Microsoft focused company, and then we stick to Microsoft products. So I may not have that information.
There is a biased answer from us. We are completely on Microsoft stack. Only if when the customer is using something and we have to integrate, I think that's the time got to learn other stuff. But if you look at the Microsoft stack, Azure, Dynamics, entire universe, it has become so huge enough that even mastering all of that is quite interesting.
Is there a tutorial which shows how to use this functionality from scratch? Not really. I mean, there may be a few blogs in it's in bits and pieces, not like one which will give you everything.
We can take that as a feedback and have a blog or a video, and certainly this one will be there. This platform is so amazing that you'll be able to review it later also.
What is the most time-consuming portion to put in place this automation? I think Hitesh, is the first part is getting started. That's the biggest thing which we faced. Once it is started, the first flow is done, then rolling out as many flows we want, as many vendors we want, it's not really big deal. Getting the first part, getting all the data validations and logic you want in flow and getting it tested is the biggest thing. And the OCR training, when we started, was quite difficult. We faced a lot of challenges with the invoice format. But I'm hoping, and it is already a little better for the OCR reading. And we also tried with the handwriting of the handwritten documents, or there was a request where there used to be a customer used to add some handwritten notes which were needed as a part of invoice. That also was readable nicely. As I said, so this is like ongoing process. So you get the first step done, then step 2, step 3. That's how we started working on this.
So our thumb rule is, if it's anything new where a lot of R&D is involved, we do a pilot. We ensure the team, the core team, the customer, and the vendor is onboarded, and then essentially elaborate and expand. But right from the start itself, have the concept of its scalability and the complexities that can come in. So that's where planning upfront, as Vineet was saying, is super important. That is probably where it takes the most time. The execution is not the critical path.
In case of multiple legal entities in FO, do we need separate PowerAutomate instances? Rachit, I don't think so. We can see the way we did, where we are processing it with the same flow with the multiple AI builder model. We can do the same thing where we are reading the data and we need to send it to a particular legal entity. We can do that. That should be a part of logic of flow. So you don't need to have multiple flows there. Can you please clarify cost of AI builder? Yeah, I think that $500 for is one of the studies. Is this correct? And does this 50 cents per invoice apply even for very high volumes? Yeah, Sanjeev. So that's what Microsoft suggested, that one AI builder should be sufficient for 1,000 invoices. The way it was, I have forgotten what's the exact calculation they do. But I think I'll have to take this question and then get back to you to get you the most correct answer from the today's timeline perspective.
Yeah, and see, in terms of licensing and pricing, always your customer, and let's say if it's an enterprise customer, you can go with the better pricing options also. What we are sharing is what is generally available, and we are kind of keeping it standard or simple to show in case of US dollar. Based on your region, Microsoft may have a different price list also to it. And you can certainly suggest and build a business case around larger volume or larger transactions, or the impact it can bring. That can help in, I will say, kind of optimizing the pricing.
Yeah, definitely. What else? If I missed any question, please let us know. You can maybe unmute yourself and or repost it because there were a lot of questions.
Yeah, there is one that if multiple POs are clubbed together in single invoice by vendor. So for that we also
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, for that we also faced a challenge. So when the flow is triggered, and if you have bigger invoice with multiple POs, the only thing that is required is PO number has to be on all the pages. So then you can use a page splitter. It will be a code. Via code, you will split those pages, and for each page with the for loop, you can process that and extract the fields from it.
Any other question?
If not, Ludwig, we can save some time and give back.
Yeah, I think if there are not more questions, but I mean the chat was already full of questions. Yeah. Did you post your email and contact details?
Already did, yeah.
Okay. So if somebody has something that comes to his mind in the afternoon, that they can always reach you. Okay. Very
Absolutely,
good. So
we'll be happy to.
Yeah, very interesting session. I think you just know by the number of questions that you got. So thank you very much for sharing your expertise here with the community. Thank you also for helping a lot, because Vinit and Rahul, they are very active in the community. So whenever you have a question, you can find them on the community forum. They do a lot and help with problems. So thank you very much for that.
Our honor. Thank you so much for having us. Have a great next session.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay, then let me stop the recording here.